cape.
Welcome, Wargamers. Today we're going to review the Maggotkin of Nurgle Start Collecting box. To do that, we're going to look at the contents of the box itself, review the war scrolls for each of the units that you get inside of there, and then have a discussion about, first of all, ways to expand upon it, as well as, is this a good box for new players or veteran players just looking to pick up a second or third or ninth army? So let's jump right in. In the box, you'll get one Lord of Blights, one unit of 5 Blight Kings, and one unit of 2 PUSGOYLE Blightlords, which could alternatively be built as the Lord of Afflictions. Now, my initial thoughts is that this is an 8 model set, right? I'm doing my math quite right. And that is super elite for this game, meaning very low model count. It's not quite Beastclaw Raiders level, where I think that box had like 4 models in it, something like that, but it is really low model count. The second thought is that this is also an incredible value because for Maggotkin, a lot of the models are very large to represent how elite they are. And so if you were to buy these things separately, it would come out to be about $145 US, and the box itself in one package is $95. So it's a good value. You're saving quite a bit of money. Another thing that I like about it is that it kind of fits with the kind of standard format for start collecting boxes, which is usually a hero, a battle line option, as well as something unique, some large type thing. A centerpiece model could be a large creature like a monster, or it could just be an iconic unit that is, again, quite physically large, and that is the PUSGOYLE Blightlords. We'll talk about it later, but I think that model type diversity is really big because when it's a new person, you're trying to get them excited about all different aspects of the hobby. And so maybe they like the lone character, maybe they like the unit of 5 guys with all the configurations that you can make with the bits from the BLIGHTKINGS, but maybe it is the big standout models that really draws their eye. The kind of visual diversity, as well as the rules interactions we'll talk about later that you teach new players with. There's a lot going for this set. But now we're going to dive into the actual individual units. And how I'm going to do this is just go through the war scroll, talk about it briefly. I'm going to show you a picture of what the model is so you get an idea of it, and then throw up some artwork as we're discussing them. So the Lord of Blights, this is your hero model. It is a single model with a brand new sculpt that we got when the book was released, and he has a 4-inch move, 7 wounds, and a 4-up save. So he is beefy, but slow. But we aren't taking him for his base profile. He has some other stuff that's really cool about him. For example, for shooting, he actually has 2 ranged attack profiles, but you got to read the rules on these. Be very careful and clear about it. The 2 different weapons he has are the Thrice Ripened Death Head, which hits on a 3, wounds on a 3. It has a -3 rend and D3 damage. That's a pretty darn good shot. The second weapon being the Munificent Bounty Death Head, and that is a 4 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, and 1 damage. It's a little bit weaker, but we'll talk about why that is in just a second. But reading his description, we see that he only gets to shoot with the better profile. So what is that second one for? Well, that's when we kind of start talking about his special rules. We'll get there in just a second. In melee, he has a pretty good hammer. It's 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 and 2 damage. So it does hit pretty hard, but you really don't want him in melee. It's not his strong suit. And so how do these things come together? Well, it's all about the special rules for this character. Starting off, he has the rule Munificent Bounty. Pick a Putrid BLIGHTKINGS unit in 3 inches, and they all get to shoot using the Munificent Bounty Death's Head weapon profile, meaning he picks a unit within 3 inches of him that are BLIGHTKINGS, and they get to shoot that ranged weapon attack that he cannot. So he actually gives weapons to nearby units, and that's really unique. He has a little special rule. It says his shield lets him reroll save rolls of 1, so a 4-up, rerolling 1s, is actually very durable. And the big thing to note about him, the thing that probably defines him most and why you see so many of this hero, is his command ability, Plague of Flies. You pick a friendly Nurgle unit, it has to be a Nurgle unit, doesn't have to be mortal or demon, it can be either, within 21 inches, and again it's not wholly within 21, just within 21. And they are -1 to hit rolls that target that unit from ranged weapons. So he makes your units, the Nurgle one, harder to shoot, but there's more to that. And if the unit has 20 or more models, they're now -2 from shooting and -1 from melee. Now you can't use it on the same unit twice, but things like Plague Bearers already have this kind of rule built in, so those do stack. And this is a massive rule, and I cannot understate that. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say he's one of the best heroes within the Maggotkin of Nurgle faction, because it's a whole faction of incredibly tough models that can shrug off damage, and we'll talk about how in a little bit. But there are a lot of wounds, slow, but very tough when they get to an objective to dislodge them from it. So how do you increase that toughness is you make them hard to hit. Now, even fewer attacks from the enemy are coming through, and you're able to shrug off even more of them as a result. There are a lot of army list builds that rely on 2 Lord of Blights to function. A lot of Plague Bearer blobs, they'll buff them with this, the command ability, and all of a sudden they're nigh indestructible once they get onto an objective. But moving into the Putrid Blight Kings, this is a 5-man unit with the following stat line. They are each 4 wounds and a 4-inch move with a 4+ save and bravery 8. So that means they are, just like their hero, slow but very tanky. Each one of them wields a blighted weapon, which is 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, and 1 damage, which is really not exciting at all for such a big elite unit, but it does get better as we talk about the special rules and abilities, just like everything else. First off, this unit has like a full complement of leaders and musicians and all kinds of stuff. So the Blightlord is the champion of the unit, and he actually has 5 wounds instead of 4, which means your unit of 5, instead of having 20 wounds, has 21 total. They also have an Icon Bearer, which grants them +1 to their bravery, so 9. That's very respectable for a bravery phrase, especially for a chaos unit for sure. And they also have a thing called the Sonorous Toxin, which is +1 to run and charge rolls, and that is extremely useful with their slow movement stat. But things come into their kind of own when they get into the special rules. The first one being Virulent Discharge. Roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe, within 3 inches of this unit in the hero phase. And if you have multiple Blight King units, you can do it across multiple battles. And on a 6-up, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. And if they have the Nurgle keyword, they heal D3 mortal wounds. And I'll be honest with you, this is a tough rule to remember. I see people forgetting it perpetually. The thing is that you always have a chance to heal your troops and hurt your enemy even more. It's on a 6, so it doesn't come up a lot, but you figure if you take 3 to 4 units of Blight Kings just as a beefy battle line, if you like the mortal stuff, if you get them in combat, it will mathematically happen over the course of a 4-turn game. What does stink is if you're playing against something like Pestilence or a mirror match with other Nurgle players, you can start healing each other as a result. Now the second ability is called Blighted Weapons. Each hit roll of a 6 inflicts D6 hits rather than 1, and that is a massive thing, right? They take down units by weight of dice, not rend. So on average, this will happen a few times every round of attacks, and they'll kind of explode. The nice thing is it cannot be modified, cannot be taken away, and that is fantastic. Now, this unit is your battle line option, the thing that you get to kind of build as the basis of your army. And for that purpose, they do a fantastic job. They're tanky, they're slow, they sit on objectives and endure things, and that is really their strong suit. The thing is that on their own, they're not the most like earth-shattering unit in the box. They can do some work, but they're more there to survive and get objectives. What does get interesting, though, is that when you start adding them to battalions, which I don't typically cover in this video because they get rewritten with every book and edition, but when you add them into battalions, the battalions tend to give them other special things. Like there's one that gives them rend, one that lets them do that shooting attack from the Lord of Blights, but anywhere, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. I don't have the book personally right now, but the point is, there's all different ways to buff this unit into oblivion. You just got to work at it. Within the context of this set, don't forget that they do have that shooting attack if they're within 3 inches of the Lord of Blights. And our last unit are the PUSGOYLE Blightlords. They have an 8-inch move, so hold on to your hat. They're zooming fast. 7 wounds each, 4-up save, and bravery 8. So there's only 2 in a unit, but there's a lot of wounds in there per dude in that unit. Remember, it's a 2-man set of models. 7 wounds each is quite beefy. And as for their weapons, you'll see 4 melee profiles. The flies themselves attack with the Venomous Sting and the Foul Mouth parts, and the Riders attack with Blighted Weapons. And these are identical to the Blight Kings. And rather than just very boringly list off 4 profiles that don't mean anything to you, I'll just pause here and let you read it. But basically, up to half the models in the unit can take a bell called the Dolorous Toxin, a special weapon that causes -2 rend and 2 damage. And in a faction largely devoid of rend, this is legit. Moving on to abilities, this unit can fly, which is incredibly important because this army, generally speaking, doesn't have a ton of fly. Maneuverability is the weak point of Maggotkin of Nurgle, especially at this level when you're not playing with trees, which we'll get to in a second here. They also have Disgustingly Resilient, which is a rule that if you are playing Maggotkin, you should become very familiar with, and that is you ignore wounds and mortal wounds on a 5+. So you get your save roll, typically, and then you roll a 5 up to see if you can ignore it a second time. You just take mortal wounds, you just get the Disgustingly Resilient roll. In addition to that, they have the same Virulent Discharge and Blighted Weapons as the Blight Kings before. That is, the chance to hurt someone nearby on a 6 when you're in the hero phase, as well as the exploding 6s on the Blighted Weapons. So what is this unit? Because they are super aggressive due to their speed, for sure. You don't have a lot of stuff that can get up there and mix in combat as quickly as them. Do keep in mind they have the demon keyword on their war scroll, which is important for some synergies when you have to expand your Maggotkin army. And although it's my favorite set of models in the box, it's kind of in an odd place. Plague drones, the same variation, but they have the plague bearers riding them instead, tend to be a stronger choice competitively. This weird place between the Blight Kings, guys on foot with a lot more wounds per unit, and the plague drones, which are the same kind of, more nimble profile, relatively speaking, that do a bit more damage. Again, they're in that weird middle area, but they are stellar models, and they look like a lot of fun. Okay, so let's take a step back now that we've seen the units in the box and kind of get a sense of, like, 40,000 foot view, what is the value of this set? Well, the Lord of Blights, your hero choice, is absolutely phenomenal. I mean that. If you're going to start a Maggotkin army solely, you're going to want at least 2 copies of that unit because they are amazing. The Blight Kings as a battle line is a great choice. A lot of folks really like Plague Bearers, but here's the thing. If you're new to the game, Plague Bearers really do well in blobs of 30. I mean, like, that's their peak efficiency is the max size units, and that's a lot to ask for someone to dump money into. So this is a great set to buy. Get your Blight Kings, fill up your battle line early, and then you can expand with Plague Bearers later on. I think that Blight Kings do have some utility. There's just a lot of attacks. The exploding 6s thing matters more than you might think. But in truthfulness, Plague Bearers tend to be more, survivable when it comes to sitting on objectives. In addition to that, while we're talking about new people and that kind of stuff, learning how synergies work in units is really important as people are learning how to play the game. It might seem overwhelming at first, but it's good to learn those things. So my point in saying that is the synergy between the Lord of Blights and the Blight Kings, just teaching people to remember rules interactions like handing off a ranged weapon profile is super key to getting people to learn what is really great about this hobby. In terms of teaching new folks the rules of the game, this is a fantastic set because none of the models are like super out there or hard to follow. It's pretty easy to see what their roles are within an army. Teaching people rules interactions like Lord of Blights and PUTRID Blight Kings with a shooting thing is really awesome. Also, your basic movement, attacking, ranged attacks, all great to learn with. In fact, you kind of get a sense for everything except for magic. Some rules are specific to Maggotkin of Nurgle, like Disgustingly Resilient, and you will want to learn those if you are interested in this army. Now, when it comes to expanding this force, there are a few directions you can go. One is just sticking with mortal stuff. If you want to stick with the Nurgle mortal stuff, buying 2 or 3 of these boxes is not a bad idea. You're getting one of the heroes. They're really, really great. And you're going to want the Blight Kings and the PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORDS. They are pretty cool if you want to stick to a exclusively mortal army. That being said, one of the best things about Nurgle is that it's a summoning army, meaning you can bring demons and stuff like that from the realm of chaos onto the battlefield. And for that, demons, the best place to start expanding in that direction is the Demons of Nurgle Start Collecting box. I did a review of that box quite a while ago. Some of the stuff has kind of been clarified in FAQs like that, but the actual review itself is still on point, and importantly, it does allow you to use magic because the Herald of Nurgle in that set is a wizard. So with those things combined, you are getting new players to experiment with all kinds of rules. Regardless of how you want to expand, whether you want to bring in demons, have them on the sideline for summoning, or go exclusively mortal, one of the things you are going to want is the terrain piece that the Maggotkin of Nurgle can use, and that's called the Feculent Gnarlmaw. To put it really briefly, there's a bunch of little effects, but the main one for the purposes of this video is that if a unit is within 7 inches of the Feculent Gnarlmaw, they can charge even if they ran previously. So all those speed 4, really slow dudes can kind of slingshot off the feculent gnarlmaw, as long as when they're done running, one is within 7 inches of that tree. So it amps up the speed and aggression of all the units in this box. Doesn't matter which one it is. All of them can reach the target much, much faster if you give them a chance to run and charge. What's interesting about that terrain piece is that you can summon it using like the summoning points mechanic that Maggotkin of Nurgle has, which I won't go into in this video because I don't talk about battle tomes too much, just the sets for folks who are interested in getting started. The thing is, a lot of common wisdom will tell you to go out and buy 3 of those trees. Don't. Go buy 1, see if you like the mechanic, play around with it a little bit, get a feel for it, and go from there. And that's certainly my top recommendation for you. If you want to see what this set is like, go get a tree next. Beyond that, though, something to kind of remember as we talk about the faction as a whole is that Nurgle has some of the coolest heroes in the GW product line, because you have the Glottkin, the Great Unclean One, the Maggoth Riders, a bunch of smaller heroes that all look super great. So you can kind of think about that, as you're expanding, what kind of heroes complement those things, and go from there. Now, as always with these review videos, my kind of criteria for deciding if a box is worth buying is, does it represent the army itself? If somebody was really excited about the artwork and the feel of Maggotkin of Nurgle, does this box represent that? And secondly, do these specific models convey what it is like to play that army, right? It's a start collecting, it's an entry point. If they don't enjoy the experience of that army, they should be able to feel that with the starter box. To the first question of, are these models representative of what the army is like? I would say absolutely. The thing is that it gives you a low model count, super tough combination of models. You get to experiment with rules like Disgustingly Resilient, and the Cloud of Plague Flies, or like that gives a negative modifier to hit from the command ability of the Lord of Blights. So like you get to experience the kind of feel of playing a Maggotkin army in a very small package. My point is, nobody will buy this box, play it, and be totally disillusioned about what Maggotkin of Nurgle is about. The second question being, is this a good place to start with that army? Meaning, are these specific models and units things that you want? And for that, it kind of depends. This one's more of a gray area. If you want to have an all-mortal Nurgle army, which is something that would interest me specifically, I would like all mortals and then summon stuff in occasionally. Yes, it's a great set. It's the perfect set. 10 out of 10, go buy 3. If you are someone who wants to have like a full, all of the Maggotkin units, like half demons, half mortals, all that kind of stuff, maybe not so much. Like I said, the hero is amazing. You're going to want that hero. Most of the value of the box is wrapped up in the price discount for the PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORDS, who really aren't the best. There are better ones. The plague drones that you get in the demon start collecting box for Nurgle far exceed them on an average game in terms of damage output. And that one also teaches you magic. If you buy a couple of those boxes, you're already building towards a battalion, the Taliban of Nurgle, which is a really fun battalion, and kind of sets you on that course towards buying more demon stuff. This one, you can buy it and use a bunch of the models, and like I said, the hero is amazing no matter what, but I think as your collection grows larger and larger, if you are someone who wants to have all the Nurgle stuff, I find you'll likely probably using the models in this less and less. It just depends on how much you like and want to play BLIGHTKINGS and PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORDS. For me personally, I like the mortal stuff, as I said before. I like the story arc of a champion rising to power and leading his mortals through all kinds of triumphs and treacheries and that kind of stuff. So I think that's super cool. The demons, I think, are a nice splash of color, but I don't want to build an army around them. But again, if you are competitive in nature, you want to do compete well in local events and things like that, the demon set I think has a much stronger lead, to be perfectly honest with you, in terms of like gameplay and stuff like that. Like buying multiples of that set, not a bad idea whatsoever. This one, I think you're going to outgrow the PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORDS, at least with their current iteration of rules, pretty quickly. And while that might sound like criticism, just remember that people enjoy different things about the hobby. I love this set because the PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORD models are amazing and I want to own them, and I will likely own this at some point because I am building a Clan Pestilence army who can ally in Nurgle stuff. Whereas if you are on the more competitive end, I do think the demon set is a bit stronger. What's really cool though is that Maggotkin of Nurgle is this massive army. There's a whole demon half, there's a whole mortal half. Both sides are very well fleshed out with excellent models and leaders that kind of bridge the gap based on keywords and things like that. that it can incorporate all kinds of people. If you are someone who enjoys the model in this kit, it is the best kit to buy. If you're someone who wants to win competitive events and the models are kind of a secondary thing for you in this hobby, there are other places to go. But you can still do those in two different extremes of interest within the same army. What that means is you just can't make a bad purchase, right? I mean, you're going to use them no matter what. It's a great starting point to expand if you want to get more competitive, because you can just use the Blight Kings to fill out your battle line. The hero is great. The PUSGOYLE BLIGHTLORDS will be fun in the kind of early stages of your game, but then you can expand from there. So what I mean is, it's a great set. It complements the Demon one well enough, and it's a very low risk thing. It's not like these models are going to become garbage tomorrow. If I was going to give it like a score, I'd probably say like a 6 or 7 out of 10, probably a 7. They're really fantastic models. Lord of Blights carries this set pretty stinking far, to be honest with you. But it just doesn't fit in the same realm as things like the Clan Pestilence box or Flesh Eater Courts, or the value is just out the roof. This one's a little more dependent on what you want to go with. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Well, no, it is brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon, who are excellent and support me, and I do so appreciate it. If you would, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below of what you are thinking about the Maggotkin of Nurgle box, and pretty soon we're going to be talking about the Idoneth Deepkin set that also came out at the same time. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy wargaming.